Hello, everyone, and welcome to Heart and Hand, the Rangers podcast. My name is David Edgar, and as always, I am your host, and I'm joined this week to discuss the last game of this season. Hallelujah, we've made it. None other than Linwood Rose himself, David Marshall. Hello, Dave.
What's the saying, mate? Like, don't be sad that it's over. I'm just happy it's over, to be honest.
No, they didn't really have to worry about an awful
No,
lot of sadness that it was over. I think. I think we had all made our peace with it. You know that way that when you hear a celebrity that you like has died, but you already thought they had died previously, so you're actually okay with it because you've sort of made your peace with it. That's how I feel about season 24,
yeah,
25.
this season had died a long time ago.
A long time ago, indeed, it had. There was still time, of course, for a game on Saturday that I thought if you needed something to just compress into 190 minutes to explain a lot of the reasons for this season, it came on Saturday. Rangers, of course, travelled to Easter Road to take on Hibs. And look, a good Hibs side. Right, I think sometimes we do diminish the agency of other sides in this because we look at it as Rangers fans. The Hibs have done really well this season. You know, they're a good team. But they couldn't go any higher than third. They couldn't drop below that. We couldn't go any higher than second and couldn't drop below that. So it was the deadest of dead rubbers. And Rangers actually played pretty well at the start, Dave. Took a lead, should have been two. We'll come to that. Somehow
Yeah,
ended up 1-1. And when I say that this contained the greatest hits of this season, it really did. First of all, Rangers capable at times, playing some good football, falling out of the games for periods, however, not being able to take all the chances that
yep.
we create or take enough of the chances that we create, giving away goals from the rarer chances the opposition have, and a refereeing fuck up for the ages.
24, 25 in a nutshell. Yeah, it had everything, as you said there, all the great hits. And it's funny, later on in the game, even after we retake the league again, I was like, we're no going to win this. We've got another goal to concede left in us. I thought we did. I thought we started off well, much better than I thought we would, because, as you said, this was a dead rubber game in every aspect of it. I will say, though, David, we need to give credit to Andy McGowan within our group chat, because he was adamant that this game meant something.
He really did. He really did. Andy was
More
not
power
having it.
to him, by the way. Like, I respect that.
Andy, I believe the term used is a 3-line whip on
Yes.
this. Andy got us all told. We were put back very much into our boxes by Mr. McGowan. And yeah, he let us know. But I think sometimes these end of season games, and you saw a bit of it at the weekend, they're not as frantic
Hmm.
as a Rangers, a Hibs Rangers game at Easter Road would be. But your players can relax a bit and play some decent stuff. So it can be a fun game. And Rangers started great. I thought the opening 20 minutes because we were pressing high up, and
Hmm.
it's something we do not do enough. And you can only imagine that it's because we can't do it regularly enough, because every time we do it, we look a much better team. Scottish teams don't like being pressed, even the decent ones. Their defenders are primarily defenders. And as we know, if we launch the ball in from wide constantly, they'll deal with that all day long. But when you press them high up, because every team now plays out from the back, there must have been some law passed at some point where
Yeah.
I missed this. Even when you watch lower division games, they're all at it. But if you press them high up, they don't like it. Rangers were doing that, making chances. Got the goal from that early on. Bad mistake from the keeper. Great finish from Cyril Dessers. Great assist by Nico Raskin. Another one for him. And then, look, we'll deal with it straight away because it was the main talking point that emerged from the game. Nico Raskin then puts us 2 up, and he's waiting for the referee to give the goal. The referee doesn't. Hibs keep playing. The Rangers players are sort of looking at each other going, why hasn't he blown for that goal?
Yep.
We don't play to the whistle, which is an ongoing issue. I will say that. But even so, given that we just scored the goal, I can kind of understand why. Hibs went up the park and scored. And Rangers supporters, anyone with eyes, sits and waits and goes, well, VAR surely will overrule that and award us the goal. Didn't happen. And straight away, the SFA were on to the BBC to say, there wasn't conclusive evidence that the ball had crossed the line, so they couldn't give it.
Mm.
Now, there was, and you only needed eyes to see it. The giveaway is when you slow it down, which is kind of what you expect VAR to do. I could slow it down on my telly at home, and I don't have all the angles and various
Yeah.
camera ability to zoom in that they have. It hits the net. It hits the inside of the net. Then it comes up onto Bashiri's back leg, which is about two yards behind the line, hits it and comes back out. It's the most obvious thing. And neutral referees on Ref Watch on Sky said, I can't believe that wasn't given. I can't believe VAR didn't come back on that. And so Rangers, of course, didn't get the goal to everyone's bemusement.
Yeah, this was again another stellar week for officiating in Scotland. Not just our game either, by the way, but I think this might be. I think this has to claim the prize for the worst one. I simply couldn't believe it. But I actually got it wrong at first. My thought was, I'm sure I heard before that there was an edict put out that VAR can't be used for goal line decisions. So I thought, right, we're not going to get this because it won't be used. But then for the SFA to actually come out and say that, oh no, we looked at it, we just didn't give it. That's incredible. There is no way you can look at that and say it's not a goal, particularly when you compare it. And I know you raised this on Twitter, as did quite a few Rangers fans. The goal that we got chopped off at Pittodrie the other week. And I remember saying at the time, the likelihood that the ball is, I actually think the ball might likely be over the line there, but what you can't say definitively is, firstly, how the linesman 30, 40 yards away could have seen it, and how VAR can say it conclusively that that ball was over the line and out of play. But they can say that one was, but this one wasn't. It's astonishing. It's a few things here. Firstly, we use, a kind of a VAR light and technologically light in Scotland, where we don't have hundreds of camera angles. We've got about 6 cameras in the whole ground.
And no
So
goal line
and
technology.
no goal line technology. So what we're actually using isn't the best. That doesn't absolve the VAR here, because I think for the pictures we did have, you could see the ball was quite clearly over the line, but it's just an absolute nonsense. Again, it seems like here, and not for the first time this season, the officials, VAR as a whole, have made a mistake and they're trying to cover up their own fuck up.
This is what they do, and we'll come to another symptom of that later. But on this one, the reason I brought up that goal, people, if you remember, it was just before half time against Aberdeen a few weeks ago up at Pittodrie, when Finlay Curtis gets the byline, crosses it in, and Hamza Egaman puts it away. And the linesman has flagged that the ball has gone out of play. The linesman on the other side, incidentally, who's looking through a crowded box of players to the far side, and he can see through 2 posts and a net and all these players, and he could see the ball was definitively out. And then at the weekend, when it's on that side, the linesman has a clear and unimpeded view. There is nobody in line for the linesman to have to look through or who can block his view. He doesn't see that it's definitively over the line.
See,
And
just on that, sorry, David, that's the thing as well. Where the linesman is, his view can only be obstructed by the post. So if he can't see the ball, then I can understand why he's not going to go. But if he can see the ball, then it must have crossed the line. So I
yeah,
don't understand.
there's no way. And it is because of something that we've said for a long time that the club is going to have to address at some point, which is the fact is that when it comes to a contentious decision like this, the default setting is to not give it for Rangers. And these 2 examples prove this conclusively, in my opinion,
Yeah, because it's easier.
because it's easier to just say, I will just rule that out. Right, we're not going to give that because we don't want 2 or 3 days in the papers where we're getting lambasted by all side, when we're
Exactly.
getting it on sports scene, when we're getting it non-stop. It's a lot easier to just go, the ball was out and the flag goes up. And someone said that to me, went, well, VAR didn't want to overrule, it was given on the field and the goal at the weekend wasn't. And I'm like, of course not, because both of those would have been things for Rangers. So when it comes to the same situation, because they would benefit Rangers, you get different decisions. And as this happens consistently, it's the idea of whether or not it's due to the referees just wanting to screw over Rangers or it's a case of they're just bad referees. I think that there is a bias. Now, only they will know if it's a conscious or unconscious bias. But I think that the first thing that comes to their mind when they do something like this is, oh shit, no, I'll just not award that. And that is influencing their decisions. And
Hmm.
you have to look at the stats this season. Now, if you look at, for example, Celtic, they are the highest ratio. They make the most fouls before getting a yellow card. They haven't had a player sent off this season uniquely. They have had the joint most penalties this season, 8. Rangers have had 1. And what that tells you is that when it comes to benefit of the doubt, they get it, we don't. And the reason for that is the fact that we all know what will happen in the media and what Celtic will do afterwards. The one time they got a contentious decision against them this season, the ball being out of play at Hibs or not, the referee, they kicked up hell and the VAR official lost his job a
Yeah.
couple of days later. So they all know this. And it's been very deliberate. It's what they've done for a number of years to get into this position. And because Rangers have been silent and complicit, then this is what happens. Rangers should have been kicking off mightily about this, dead rubber or not, because this is part of a wider pattern, which is that if there is any doubt whatsoever, you don't give it to Rangers. Now, you see it again with penalty kicks. If you look at the amount of penalties that Rangers have had, and I'm having to go back 2 seasons because, as I say, we only got 1 in the league this year, the other night. The amount of them by VAR is ridiculous. Something like
Yeah.
9 out of 11 that have had to go to VAR. Now, that is because a referee on the field does not want to make the decision. So you can call it bias, and as I say, conscious or unconscious, or you can call it cowardice, which I think is probably more accurate. They just
Yeah.
do not want to give these decisions. But here's the thing, it's your job and you wanted it. So if you want to be a referee, then you've got to do it a lot better and a lot fairer. Because regardless of whether they are getting together and having a laugh about screwing over Rangers, or they genuinely think that they're doing their best and that any bias is, as I say, not something they're consciously aware of, it leads to the same in the end, which is terrible decisions happening. I mean, we might as well get our own spot on that weekend roundup on
Yeah.
Sky on a Monday morning with Dermot Gallagher, because it seems to be one every week.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. I think it is that unconscious bias. I don't believe for a second that the referees are going to our games going, right, let's make sure these orange bastards don't win the day or anything like that. But it, it is the other side of it. If they give
Well,
no on it, all joking aside, I honestly don't believe that. But I do believe the other side of it, that they know subconsciously, if I give a penalty to Rangers here or even a contentious decision, then the next 7 days of my life are going to be a complete hell. And that's you know these referees are human. That's going to affect anyone. But as you say, that's their job. And I think the solution is that it's probably not something that we'd want to do in an ideal situation. We wouldn't have to do it, but if this is the landscape that we're playing in, and these are the rules that are getting played by other clubs, and the one that's the best that just happens to be our direct rival for all the trophies in this country, we need to go play in the mud. That's it's simple as that. Staying quiet and doing the dignified response or whatnot isn't going to work. We need to be just as dirty, devious, and underhanded as they are, because if we don't, this is going to keep continuing.
yeah, definitive proof at the weekend. A wee shout out to Cyril Dessers. He's taken a bit of a pounding on this show over the last 2 years, and I haven't changed my opinion on him. I still think Rangers need a more reliable goal scorer in
Yep.
terms of big chances at big moments. But finished the season top scorer in the league, and he is a guy who he never hides in a treatment room, and he keeps going. And let's be honest, some of the stuff he's gone through with us when we've been at the end of our tether with him can't have been very pleasant.
Mhm.
But he does just keep coming back, and he keeps getting in among the goals.
Yeah, finishes the season as the top goal scorer. On one hand, what more do you want from the guy? And I've seen people argue, online that our problems don't lie with Dessers, it's elsewhere in the team, and that is true to an extent. But I think Dessers does hamper us overall with the way he plays compared to how we want to play. I just don't think he's the guy that you can have leading the line if you want to be a successful team. That doesn't absolve the many failures throughout the team, but yeah, listen, he's everything you said there. He's obviously very strong-willed. He keeps going, and he has scored a very respectable number of goals for us. But I don't know, David. He just doesn't pass the eye test.
I just don't think we win a title with him as our
No,
main number nine. And the counter argument, which gets put to us quite a lot, is that, well, if he had better players around him, and that's fair. And also, I think people pointing to the defence are spot on. The amount of goals we have lost this season, particularly this side of Christmas, is diabolical.
yeah,
I mean, it's absolutely dreadful because even when we're not at our best, we tend to have most of the ball, right? So you're not having to do a lot of stuff. And maybe that's it, Dave. Maybe the fact that our better performances have come against European sides, have come against Celtic this season, is because these defenders are good in a siege defending mentality where you've got a lot to do. But it's why Andy Goram was so good. He might be standing there watching for 89 minutes and have one save to make, but he made it. That's the thing about being at Rangers. You might not have a lot to do, but you still need to do it.
yeah. I mean, if you can't do that, then you're no use to Rangers. Frankly, if you're in a defensive position, you're going to have to be able to,
Concentration.
yeah, constantly, you're going to have to stand there for what, 50, 60, 75% of the match, maybe more, and not be doing anything. But when you're called into action, you need to switch on. You need to always be focused. If you can't do that, then you know it's all very well having good performances in Europe, but if you're not used to us during the bread and butter, then you're not used to us as a Rangers player. And unfortunately, I think that applies to many players. In a way, I feel a wee bit bad about singling him out here, but this has always been my problem with John Suter. I think he's exactly as you said it. I think John Suter is a very good siege defender, but we've seen it time and time again where he's made a mistake because he's not been switched on, because he's not been concentrating, he's looking up at the birds and whatnot. I think he's been good in Europe because we have been constantly in a lot of games, been under a lot of pressure. But against the Motherwells, Kilmarnocks, where they're going to have three attacks in the game, he switches off and he makes mistakes. He's been nowhere near our, worst defender. I'd say that. But if we are starting a guy like that as one of our two main centre halves over the course of the season, it is going to lead to problems.
Yeah, I mean, I think the fact that Leon Balogun at 37 and injury prone is still our best defender,
It's
I
an
think
embarrassment to everyone else.
it says everything about it. That he's our best defender now, and we saw it at the weekend. Proper comes on and is nowhere at all for the Hibs
I'd
equaliser.
love to see the scouting report on that guy because that is just one signing that
I think it was
since the day's
basic.
arrived that
I,
I have not gotten.
I think it was done on the nod. I think Ulderink said, "Oh, you need a centre half, I know one," and we
Aye,
just went and did it. I think because you're right. Anyone watching him would go, "This guy has qualities, but he's not SPFL." You know,
does
he's
not
not
tick
physical
one
enough.
box for what we need.
No, and he's looked like, and to be honest, he's looked like a guy who's been a fish out of water for most of his time at Rangers, and the weekend was another example of that. Last bit on then the VAR. News comes as we record that apparently the compliance officer, one, exists. So there's something. And two is looking at the comments made by John Brown on RTV when Bomber said it's corruption. And Tom
Yeah,
Miller said, I don't think we can say that. And he said, well, I'm saying it because he's Bomber. He gives no fucks. Now, firstly, Dave, I'm not sure what they can do. Do they ban him from the RTV commentary box for 6 games or something? Does he have to do his commentary from further back in the stand? I don't know. But, given some of the shit that has emanated from Celtic TV over the years, it should be a very quick answer from Rangers here. To be honest, it should be a very quick answer from Rangers anyway, such as it's a club channel, and rather than focusing on the complaint, the complainer, why don't you actually look at the reason for the complaint? Um, Basically, yeah. I mean, I understand you need to have a relationship and all that stuff, but in this one, you should be telling the SFA to fuck off.
Yeah, I totally agree. I will just say, like, I saw like Tom Miller was getting a wee bit of stick, and I know his styles are polarizing, but he had to say that because this was going to happen. You know, that's his job as a club employee to say that. I thought Bomber's comments were brilliant, and as far as I'm concerned, he can say what he wants. Um, I, what might happen is we might get a fine from it. I think the likelihood is that nothing will really come from it. We might be served with a warning about future conduct during broadcast, but this is all just show stuff from the SFA, I think.
Well, actually, breaking news. A
Oh,
spokesperson for Rangers has said in a season where Rangers have been on the receiving end of several major officiating errors, frustration is entirely understandable. The idea that spontaneous remarks could warrant disciplinary action is excessive, surprising, and inconsistent. This development should not overshadow what was a clear mistake evident to anyone who has seen the footage of the game. The focus should be on raising refereeing standards for the good of Scottish football. Should a charge follow, we will defend it and question whether club channels across the league are being monitored and policed equally.
well, that's the thing as
That's
well.
actually quite good.
That 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 is,
Kind of ticks everything we
yeah.
just asked for, so fair's fair.
You know that the last line I think is very good as well because are they listening to these club broadcasts every week? Are they tuning into St Johnston TV or Kilmarnock TV just to make sure nothing naughty was said? Because you know a lot of these club channels, like the standards, pretty basic, and there's a lot of volunteers involved in that, and there's just fans who are doing the commentary and stuff, not professional broadcasting people. So I imagine some things in the heat of the moment are said, but are they picked up because it's not a bigger platform as you know
Of
a
course.
Rangers game
It's like
is.
trial by sports scene, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, no, but we are all Bomber Brown, frankly. And I think, I don't like to speak for the Rangers support, but on this one, I'm fairly confident most will agree with me on what was said. Moving on then, Dave, the big news, of course, from the weekend is that Barry Ferguson's time as interim manager
Hmm.
has ended. The club thanked him for his services on Sunday, and the looks as though we might even get an announcement on the new manager at some point this week. So, first of all, your thoughts on the decision. I admit to a touch of surprise that Barry was considered by some to be in contention, because I must admit personally I've never thought that, and the reason for that has been the results. I think it's a tough job, right? He came into a broken squad full
Hmm.
of players who were either no confident or just a bit checked out, and he did what he could. There were some good moments in there, obviously Turkey, the penalty shoot at home, the away to Celtic, but 4 wins in 11 in the league was not going to get him the job. And it didn't come as a surprise to me. It didn't come as a surprise to anybody I know, but yet I've had people getting in touch with me saying, all right, now Barry's not getting it. Who's getting it? And I'm sort of like, what did you think he was?
Yeah, I've been a wee bit surprised how this has been handled by the club throughout. I'd love to know what he was told initially because I assumed we'd have brought him in and told him this is just to the end of the season. You're not getting this full time. If we led him on to the idea that this was an addition, I think that's a wee bit unfair because I don't think he was ever getting the job. I don't think anyone realistically thought he would be getting it. Now, if he went on to win his the Europa League, that would have been a conversation. But again, that was very unlikely, and as it turned out, it didn't happen. But I was always of the opinion that this, you know, the season's done. There's very little to play for outside of these European games. I'm happy, you know, that one of my heroes is getting a chance to do it, and I'm just going to get on the train and enjoy the ride because what happens from here to the end of the season domestically doesn't really matter now. He was, you know, his interviews surprised me a lot because the way he was speaking, you know, it certainly seemed like he felt he was in contention. But when it comes down to that, if you take all the emotion and who he is out of it, you look at the bare facts of it. He could never have been given it. It just his record wasn't good enough.
And I have sympathy because,
Hmm.
as I say, this is a poor squad. And I think we've all questioned their attitude at times, particularly to run of the mill domestic games. But I think though that for me, it's he came in, he did what he could, and I'm
Yeah.
grateful for that, and I appreciate that he did that. I think though it's time for us to move on with a new manager and really a kind of whole new direction, really, because I think we've got to go off and reinvent the wheel here
Hmm.
because what we've been trying for a number of years hasn't worked.
No, agreed. And that's what I hope for these new owners coming in, appointing their own manager. This should be something different that we've not seen. It should be an overall, club structure of how we want to play and what we want in a manager and fitting in around that. So when it comes to replacing managers, we've got an idea of who we want and how to go forward, and we're not just going back to either get a guy in here that was here before because he knows what it's all about, or flinging stuff at the wall and pulling a Fleet Cumlon out of nowhere as well. He's won league titles somewhere else, so hopefully he can do it here as well. I'm very optimistic about the future, but I didn't see how Barry Ferguson was ever going to fit into that. And with Barry leaving, for me, he leaves with absolutely no animosity. I think he
No,
did it. I think he did as
I,
best as he could.
I actually think that he leaves enhanced.
Yeah, yeah, I agree
In
with
the
that.
eyes of the Rangers support, I think he leaves enhanced, to be honest, because I think we all understand what he was working with.
Yeah, Dross is what he was working with, and
Yep.
yeah, he got us that good result at Parkhead, which was
Which
a nice day.
a lovely day,
So
but also shouldn't be undervalued because we hadn't won there in 4 years.
yeah, absolutely, yeah,
And those things mount up, and to see a Rangers team actually go there and go in the front foot and go, no, we hadn't seen that in years either. When you think of this kind of spineless performances that we've been putting in, so um,
and what I will say about that as well, David, if we go into next season now and we beat them in the first Old Firm game, then they'll start thinking, listen, we've not beat them in a while.
that's exactly it. So I don't undervalue that, to be honest.
Hmm.
I think that it deserves. Yes, it wasn't the most meaningful Old Firm game ever, but we needed it. It really is that
Absolutely.
simple. We needed it, and he achieved it, and he achieved it in a way that we all enjoyed as well. It wasn't just that he did it; it was the manner in which he did it. So, as I say, for me, Barry Ferguson leaves with best wishes. I like I say, I think he had to do something exceptional to get the job, and
Hmm.
unfortunately, he didn't. Because I think the vast majority is would have loved him to come in, win every game, and we're going here. Keep Barry.
Yeah.
I know. For example, you're of the generation that you if he phoned you the day and said, "Could you come round and cut my grass?" You'd be borrowing a lawnmower.
Oh, his hedges would be getting done a lot, aye.
Exactly. Exactly. Weeding and everything. So yeah, I don't understand any. And some people say, well, he didn't do any better than Clement would have. It's difficult when you're a temp guy,
Hmm.
and I don't judge a temporary manager to the same standards as a full time one because for me it was very much just hold the reins to the end of the season, and then we can move on. Obviously, there's a
See the
lot going on.
idea. See the idea as well. Sorry that it wouldn't have been any worse if we kept Clement on. Clement didn't deserve to see out the season. Simple as that. He had to go regardless of what happened after him.
They should have been gone. The Queen's Park should have gone that
Exactly.
night, and I'll sit by that. There are results that you have to send a signal saying this is not acceptable. We cannot have that, and that was one of them. So no, also the fact it would have been completely toxic
Hmm.
in and around Rangers. So I'm not sure I buy that all the results would have been the same. People were happened with Beale as well. They get to a point where there's no coming back.
Yep.
And that's exactly what had happened there. So big thanks to Barry, to Neil McCann, Billy Dodds, and Alan McGregor. But Rangers moving on to hopefully an exciting and interesting new chapter. We'll do season reviews and whatnot through the summer, Dave. So I won't spend too long on this, but this has got to be an annus horribilis, mirabilis. That's hopefully next year. This has got to be one that we look back on and go, that's what happens. That's use this as an example when you get decisions wrong in a boardroom, when you get bad recruitment, when you don't hire the right manager. That season is what happens, and we can never have that again. And that's really the only thing I think we can take from this season.
Yeah, this season didn't just come about itself. This was years of mismanagement throughout the club that led us to this point. I'll be honest, I've said a few times that I saw the entire season go down the drain the moment that Dynamo Kiev scored at Hampden. I was like, well, that's us knackered now. And I was, I don't think that was any great out of the blue prediction, but I think it showed to be right. We can't have another season like this. This has to be the last one like this where nothing is achieved. There is no progress throughout the team, throughout the club. We might go in next year and we might not win the league again, but there has to be signs that we're going in the right direction because we have now been not just flatlining but declining for years.
No, we have, and we're sick of it. So hopefully next season we'll begin to see some progress towards being the kind of Rangers that we need to be,
Hmm.
and being the kind of Rangers all of us as supporters demand and expect and are entitled to, in my opinion. Anyway, Dave, just before we go today, the Rangers women's team, who I know you're a strong advocate of
Oh,
and
you
wish
know how
well
to
of
cheer
for a
me up,
number of
mate.
years. Well, they had got a rub of the green in the second last fixtures with needed a draw between Glasgow City and Hibs to give Rangers women the chance to win the title on Sunday at Ibrox against Hibs in a match that it was simple. They needed to win. A draw, a defeat, Hibs won the title. A win for Rangers, we win the title. Anything less, not only do we not win the title, but we don't get into the Champions League qualifiers and, in fact, finish third.
Mm.
And I'm not as regular watcher of the women's side as you are, but I watched this game and I thought Rangers were very poor, unimaginative, and looked like the pressure had got to them. And I have to say, I looking at it, I thought that Rangers team choked.
Yeah, I thought about 20 minutes in, this isn't going to happen today. There was so much that just baffled me watching that game yesterday. I think the players as a whole, it was a complete bottle job. I thought they looked nervous from the start, didn't seem up for it. I think Joe Potter has to take a lot of the blame for yesterday. I think our tactics were absolutely wrong. Why we continued to just hoof the ball up the park against a team that's got a fantastic defensive record, who you need to play fast and get in behind, but instead we were lumping high balls up to their centre halves, which they dealt with all day. And we didn't seem to realise that wasn't working and just kept at it and kept at it. I think she was far too slow to make any changes. I don't know how Wilkinson stayed on the park for the entirety of the game. I think she was far too slow bringing on Jane Ross and Lizzie Arnott. You've got someone in Jane Ross who's got a stellar goals scoring record, who's playing in the last ever league game, who'd be absolutely chomping at the bit to go on and get the goals to win us the league. And Lizzie Arnott, whose goals have dried up this season, but she's still the assist leader in the league, and we were creating nothing. So that'd be a player I'd be wanting to bring on straight away. I just didn't get it yesterday, and overall, it's the women's program at the club. It's in a it's got a lot of questions to answer. That the investment that's made in it, the resources that are available to the players. I think it's quite right for the club to be asking: are we getting a suitable return in what we're investing? The fact that we've not won the league again is a disaster. We should be dominating this league. It shouldn't be coming down to the final day anyway. But the fact that we've missed out on Champions League football again, that's an absolute war crime in football in terms to be finishing third in this league. And it's the same. We've lost the league this year for the same reasons that we lost the league last year. We lost the league last year because we had a poor record against Glasgow City and Celtic, the teams that finished first and second. We've lost the league this year. We had a terrible record against Hibs. That was the thing. People talking about we scored 139 goals and finished third. That's all well and good. The majority of those goals came against the lesser
Amateurs,
teams. Yeah, the lesser teams
in
who
all
have.
honesty, amateur side.
Oh yeah, it's teams that are full of girls who are either one still at school or lassies that are coming off a shift to play a game. We scored, I think it was only one goal against Hibs in the four league games that we played. That right there is why we didn't win the league, because when it came to the games that really matter, we choked it. And I tell you, I would scrap any other games at Ibrox for this team for the foreseeable, because they're awful at Ibrox every time, particularly in these games. And frankly, I don't think at this point you say they deserve to play at Ibrox, because they've shown time and time again that they can't hack it.
Well, that's I'm sure something else that'll be in Kevin Thelwell's to-do list when
Hmm.
he comes into Rangers, and it's going to be a very busy one. Right then, folks, that will do us here on Heart and Hand for this week. We'll be back throughout the summer, don't worry. We'll have plenty of shows for you, some on what's going on at Rangers, some a look back, and maybe some fun stuff as well. So my thanks to Mike Lee and to Paul Myers, our producers, and my thanks to the wonderful David Marshall.
I'm just going to put myself in for the end of season show next year when we've won the treble and the
I,
and the Europa League.
I tell you what, right? I promise, we win the league next year. You can, I'll have you on for this show. There. I made a promise.
The big swinging Willie show to celebrate. I'm in for it.
Yeah, yeah. Although if we win the league next year, I think I'm going back into the booze. So you'll find me like naked on top of the Mirage in Las Vegas at 4 a.m. You know, and like, where's David? He's supposed to be doing a show. Oh, he's on the news. Anyway, folks, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you very much for sticking with us. Not just this season, but throughout the years. Next year, is as we start, we'll actually be going into our 15th year. It's our 15th anniversary this summer.
Wow.
And we're very, very proud to have been bringing you this for all those years, but we can only do it with your support. If you want up to the minute gel stuff and discussion on everything that's happening, go to our Patreon site. It's patreon.com/heart and hand. Till then, I'll speak to you again soon. Take care, everybody. Bye bye.